Hi, everyone. Welcome to our August 2025 tips and tricks session. This month, we're looking at REDCap's data quality rules. So the data quality rules, these are an advanced REDCap feature, and they allow you to perform ad hoc data checks. So they have functions to check for field values that may indicate issues. So things like missing data, calculations that are no longer correct, invalid data, data that's out of range. And then they pull a list of fields that are impacted by those rules. So they allow for exclusion. So you can say, out of my list of missing fields, these 5 are okay. These ones I want to follow up on. And the other cool thing is that they're sensitive to branching logic. So unlike reports where if I searched for if the name field is blank, it's going to show every record where that field is blank, even if that field is hidden by branching logic. Data quality rules are sensitive to branching logic. So if I'm pulling my list of empty fields, any field that is empty because it's hidden by branching logic is not going to show up in that menu. And then finally, you are able to create custom rules. So we're going to go over the rules that are built directly into REDCap and what they can be used for. And then we'll talk a little bit about building your own custom rules. So the data quality rules, first of all, you can find them on the left-hand sidebar here. This is the data quality feature. This is something that does have to be designated under user rights. So in order for someone to access data quality rules, you can see down here, there are two toggles for the data quality rules. So you can give people just the ability to execute rules, in which case they can only run the rules that REDCap has already supplied or that another user has created. And then you can also give people the ability to create rules and edit rules that another user has created. So if you don't see data quality on your left sidebar, you probably haven't been assigned the user privileges for it. And you can limit people's control over data quality rules to just being able to run rules that already exist. So this is the data quality rules module, and there's quite a list of data quality rules that already exist within REDCap. So these are built in, and all you have to do is execute them. So the first group of rules we're going to look at, these are rules that look for missing data. So rule A looks for blank values, and this is going to be any field that doesn't contain data. And this will exclude fields that are hidden by branching or marked with a missing data code. So if I go here and execute this rule, you'll see this pulls a list of the fields that are currently empty. Right? I can also exclude fields. So that's what this exclude button here does. And what that does is it pulls these off of the list that's popping up here. So if I just excluded, I believe creatinine and bun from record 1. So let's hit clear so we can run the rule again. See, now it's only saying 57, but if I come up here at that top left, I can also view the ones that I can get the ones that have been excluded back on my list. And I can see that I actually have a total of 61 blank fields. And I can choose to exclude or unexclude things. So this exclusion aspect lets this really operate as a working list. So you can exclude certain fields. Let's say that I only want to follow up on labs. I could exclude things like my cancer sites and consent dates, anything that I want to do, and then I can get them back. I can get them back to follow up on another batch of fields. So rule A is going to look for any fields that are left blank. Rule B is very similar, but this one is only checking for blank values on required fields. So fields that have that red required star toggled onto them. So you can see I have 57 blank values. I only have 5 on required fields. And so these are my required fields that are blank. And if I click on one of these, what the field is currently listed as, that no data, it'll take me directly to that form and to that field so that I can follow up on it. Now, those are the blank fields. Another way that you can have missing data is fields that contain missing data codes. So the missing data codes are a feature that you toggle under project setup. And you come to additional customizations. And here are your missing data codes. So this is something that you have to set up. You have to decide which missing data codes you're going to use and what the value is going to be. So if I have a multiple choice field with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I now also have built in NA and unknown using NA and UNK as their codes, their values. And so this is a feature where REDCap knows that certain codes mean the data is missing. So if I come into my record and I want to say that data is missing and I'm flagging it with the missing data codes, I use this M bubble right here, and that's where I can say things like not applicable. And so this is a feature that, unlike adding NA as an option directly in a multiple choice field, it's a standardized way of flagging missing data throughout your project and of knowing when you export your data, okay, all of these are NA. And the data quality rules also interact with that. So these blank values, you'll see they're not going to flag the fields that I just marked as NA because they're not truly blank. I mean, this is listing more fields, but that's because I just saved a form with some blank fields. You can see the glucose and the creatinine, those aren't up here. Those instead show up when I run rule I. So rule I is fields that contain the missing data codes. And that's where you can see these glucose bun creatinine that I just flagged as NA. That's where those have been marked. And like before, you can click on the value that's listed to go look at the field. But that's the thing to understand about rule I, is that it's only going to check, or it's only going to pull fields that have been flagged with a missing data code using the missing data codes feature. Just entering NA into a field or using a multiple choice that you've configured as, not applicable or unknown, that's not going to do it. It's looking for that missing data codes feature. And then that missing data codes feature will also exclude fields from the blank values check because it is no longer blank. It's using the missing data code. It's a different way of looking at that missing data. Another type of data quality rule that you can run is data quality rules that look for invalid data. So rule C is going to look for field validation errors, incorrect data type. So this is going to apply to text fields that have validations. And generally, the way that this is going to happen is if I have a field where I added a validation after I already had some data entered, and now some of my data doesn't match the validation. So let's execute rule C here. And you can see here, so let's go look at these potassium values. So we've got a number for potassium. This validation is requiring it to be an integer. And the validations the validations, unlike the ranges, do not allow for you to just ignore them. They do insist when the form is open. But if I've done my validation change after I already have data in my project, I might run into this situation where I have some of these values that no longer fit. That's the value that's saved, and I have to follow up on them in order for them to fit. Or I can leave them as they are, depending on how my project works. So I come back in here and you can see, so that potassium value that I changed from 5.0 to just 5, that is now an integer, and that doesn't flag anymore under rule C because it now matches the field validations. But 3.8, 4.5, 4.9, those are not integers. So those are still flagging as a validation error, and I would need to follow up on those. Again, this is going to happen a lot when you change data fields after the data has already been entered. But rule G is looking for multiple choice fields with invalid values. So if I have a multiple choice field and I remove some values from it, if I actually delete values, then those values become invalid. So let's say I come in here and I decide that I want to get rid of my diabetes option. And I submit those changes for review. And you see, this is flagging because this is something I'm actually not supposed to do. I'm going to do it now. But this is actually something you don't want to do, right? You never want to delete multiple choice options after you've started entering data because this is how you lose data. But you can also run data quality rule G and see where you've got those invalid values now. See, so now that value of option one was diabetes, that's no longer a valid value. And side note, this is already covered in our video on hiding items in REDCap instead of deleting them. But if I want to make an option stop showing up without causing data to become non-conformant, or without causing data to become invalid or lost, I can use this hide choice action tag. And I can say, let's hide option 4 for celiac. So this allows me to, we'll submit those changes. So you see, those ones went through automatically because I haven't actually caused any data to become invalid. So we can see that celiac is no longer showing up, but it's not flagging as an invalid option. We've still only got that option 1 that I actually deleted. Nobody who has option 4 has lost that data. So the trick with the invalid data checks, they can be very useful, but data quality rules very specifically check the data that's already been entered against the current field parameters. And so what this means is that if I'm considering a change and I want to know if option 4 is in use anywhere, or if I want to know whether my potassium values are all integers or if I have decimals I'm going to need to worry about, I don't use the data quality rules for that. The data quality rules can't just show me all my data and let me kind of run that check. The best way to check data before making a change to my project is to go into the reports and stats. And that's where I can view my report and look at the precancer diagnoses here and see, does anyone have celiac checked? Oh, they do. So I can do that. So I can perform that check before I make my changes. The next group of data quality rules check for abnormal data. So there's 2 types of abnormal data checks. So one of them is looking for field validation errors. So I'm going to put it back in draft mode just so we can see what it would look like on the build end. We're going to look at those lab fields, and you can see I've got this minimum and maximum specified here. So this is the expected range for my glucose. So if I put in a glucose of 78, that's fine, it's within the normal range. If I put in a glucose of 105, that is outside of the normal range. REDCap will still let me save it because out of range values happen. They are a part of life. But because I have that range specified on my field, I can run data quality rule D and look at all of my out of range values. So we can see here that on record 2 month 1, I've got a glucose of 500. So I can go just click right here, follow up on that. But the important things to know about rule D is that it's checking against the min-max range you have specified on this field. So I got this range from looking at the lab normal values or the lab normal ranges for a particular lab. But the only reason that Rule D has anything to compare to is because I put them into the min-max range here. So Rule D does not have the ability to compare to any outside source to look for out of range or abnormal values. It can only go off of what you've told REDCap is the expected range for this variable. And it is going to be specific to the fields. So you can run Rule D once to look for fields that are out of range in every field in your project. It will check every field in your project. So unlike a report, you don't have to pull it one field at a time. It can pull all of them at once. And it will compare for each field to that field's min-max range. The other type of abnormal data that we can look for is outliers. So anything like a numerical field, a number, an integer, a calculation field. Rule E lets us check for outliers. And this is going to go off of the automatic definition of an outlier. So it's going to calculate the standard deviation and the mean. And then anything that's more than 2 standard deviations above or below the mean, that gets flagged as an outlier. And the important thing to understand here is that it's only comparing the data that exists within the project. It doesn't compare to outside data sources. So if I run Rule E here, you can see I've got a couple in here. Got a funky looking ast right here, a funky looking glucose. Those are my outliers. But they're only being compared to what is in my REDCap project. So if I had a project where everyone had, an elevated AST value, and then I had one person with a normal value, it could actually flag as an outlier depending on how far away they are. So it only goes off of the values in your project. It can flag things as an outlier compared to the other values in your project, but it doesn't have access to any outside sources. So it can't tell me if my glucose value is an outlier for the general population, only that it's an outlier compared to the other glucose values within this project. And then the outlier calculation is a pre-programmed calculation. So this one does not require you to specify the min and max. It does not care about the min and max. If everything is way above your max, it's still going to calculate a mean and standard deviation from the values that are entered in your project. And it's not going to ignore things just because they fall within normal. We also have a group of rules that I'm going to say they check for potentially erroneous data. I'm never going to guarantee any data is erroneous until you've actually followed up on it. But Rule F is where you have hidden fields that contain values. So Rule F is going to look at your branching logic and go, okay, this field should be hidden by branching logic, therefore it should not contain data. And it will return you a list of those to follow up on. It does not assess fields that are hidden using action tags. So if I've used an @hidden action tag, if I've used if-then logic with hidden action tags, it doesn't care about those. Things can be hidden with action tags and still contain values, and Rule F does not care about them. It's only following up on the branching logic. If I come in here and I run Rule F, I actually do have a field that is hidden by branching logic that does contain data. And this is just a field that I filled out some test data and then changed my branching logic so that it would hide this field. Let's click on that and go to the form. And you can see this is the error message that you normally experience when you have hidden fields containing data. So you get to decide whether to erase the value or not. And if you hit cancel, you get to go look at that field, go look at the context. The important thing to know is that if I exclude this under Rule F, so I've excluded this under my data quality check rule, that does not get rid of this error message next time I go to open the form. So I will always get this error message. The exclude does not get rid of the error message. Basically, unless I tell REDCap, okay, you can hide the field and erase the current value, or I can keep clicking cancel every time and still be able to see the context, or I can resolve the branching logic issue. But that is rule F. So rule F is going to let you know that you've got data saved in a field that is now hidden by branching logic and allow you to follow up on that situation instead of having to open every form and see if you get that error message. Rule H lets you look for incorrect values for calculated fields. So this usually comes up when you've updated a calculated field. And it lets you check the values for the calculated field against the current calculation that is saved in REDCap. So again, this is not looking at external sources and checking that your calculation itself is correct. So if I have put in a calculation for BMI, it's not going to go check that I'm using the BMI equation correctly. It's just going to look at, do my inputs and calculations still yield this output, or do I have an old output that needs to be updated? And one of the cool things about Rule H is that if you have edited a calculation, you can update those calculated fields in bulk. So it has that Fix Calcs Now button, and it lets you fix all of those incorrect calculations at the same time. Rule H will also work if you've added a new field, a new calculated field to a form that already has data saved on it. So Rule H will not work on forms that haven't been saved. Can't run it on an empty form. But if a form has been saved and there's a calculation on it that, may be new, maybe you haven't actually opened the form since you added that calculation, Rule H will let you check for that too. So you can add a new calculation and update in bulk using Rule H. You can also build your own rules. This is where you can perform different types of data checks. This is the create and edit rules functionality that you can assign or unassign in user rights. But you're basically going to define what you're checking for in terms of your fields, just like you would for a calculated field, for branching logic, for an alert trigger. And you're going to be able to perform a check. I highly recommend that as you're building this, that you test it as a calculated field to make sure that your logic behaves as intended, and then you can delete or hide the field after you've tested it. But just to be sure, that I've made my age calculation correct, or this sodium potassium proportion, I've got them in the right order. I've got the function working correctly. So it's worth checking, especially as your calculations get more complicated, just to be sure. So we have to give our data rule a title, and then we can write out the logic. So we're going to say age less than 18. So we can now add this rule, and then we get the option to run it. And it's going to look for anyone whose age is less than 18. And you can see here, I don't have anyone. Let's say we're doing this in Hobbit years. I want to check for anyone under 33. So I would come up here and clear, be able to re-execute my rule. And now I can see by Hobbit standards, I have 25-year-old. Hobbits don't come of age until 33. So that that's what it would look like to have one of your custom rules flag. I'm going to put it back to 18 so that I don't forget. So that it continues making sense in human years. And then I can also, do a slightly more complex calculation. So I'm just going to look for things where we've got a certain sodium potassium ratio. Maybe I want to look for people whose labs are within a certain proportion to each other. So I can add and execute that too. You can see my sodium and potassium ratios generally do not conform with this. So most things are flagging because that's not a normal and expected ratio for sodium and potassium. Another thing that I can do is I can set one of these rules to check as I'm entering that form. So I can say, let's do the underage participant one because it's simpler. that I want to execute in real time on my data entry form. So this isn't something I can do with the regular data quality rules that are already built in. I can only do this with my custom rules that I build for myself. But let's go in here. We're going to say consent date is today, but our participant was actually born in 2018. So the age is going to be 7 now. So let's save this form. We're going to get rid of the required field. So I get this pop-up saying that the data quality rule was violated. And this is only going to happen when I save the form in data entry mode. So participants completing a survey are not going to see this. Only my study team is going to see this. But it lets me know that we have this discrepancy for the record. And that, I can either exclude it or follow up on it. So I can have that check running in real time as people are entering my data as well. I just wanted to do a quick little look at data quality rules versus reports because they have a lot of very similar uses, but there's some fine differences between them. First of all, the data quality rules will only show you the fields that are flagged based on your rule. So they'll only show you the missing fields or the records where the participant's under 18. It only shows you the problem fields. Whereas on a report, you can select the number of fields you want to display. So you can show all your data at once, you can combine multiple filters, you can subset with live filters, it can be searchable, and you can show the other fields in your project so that as you're looking at these potential problem fields, you're also able to see the other fields and give yourself context. Data quality rules do have that field exclusion feature. So you can manually manage your review tasks a little more easily with data quality rules because one flagged item at a time, you can exclude things that you're not following up on right now. Whereas the report, you can't change the fields being pulled on the report page. You can sort, you can search, but the only way to change what gets pulled and to pull things off of your report list is to change either the contents of the record or the settings of your report. For customizations, reports allow you to create customizations either by coding or using drop-down menus. So there is very much a graphical user interface to make custom reports very approachable. If you want to customize a data quality rule, you are going to have to code that manually. There's no drop-downs to make that easier for you. And then comparison power. So the data quality rules, and this is one of their biggest strengths. Reports don't compare readily across records. They don't have input of the field design parameters. The data quality rules do. So this is their big deal, is that they can compare across records. They can compare to the field parameters, and they can look at all your fields at the same time to look for missing values or invalid or out of range. But at the same time, as we mentioned earlier, the data quality rules can only look at the current state of the project, and they can only compare to the parameters your fields currently have. So if you need to review data before changing parameters, that's something where you might be better off looking at reports because the report can show you at least all of your data right now. The data quality rule will show you specifically the problem data, but it doesn't know that data is going to be a problem until you've already made changes to those fields. And that concludes our little session on data quality rules. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day.